An old question raises new concerns. A plan to ask about citizenship on the next census has a lot of people worried about the impact on Texas.
Our businesses lose, our families lose, our communities lose.
Why some say the citizenship question could hurt Texas in the long run.
It matters for the billions of dollars that goes into local communities for schools, for housing, for roads.
Fighting back against a dangerous drug problem.
It's a public health crisis across the entire country. Texas is no exception.
Opioid addiction is killing people in the Lone Star State, and there's no easy solution.
There's not a one-size-fits-all for any state, any city.
How lawmakers are taking steps now to fight this deadly problem. And big money coming to Texas for border security.
It will purchase a lot more technology down there, which I think is essential and vital to securing the border.
Some Texas counties will soon see funding, but it's not paying to build the president's border wall. Hello, thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. 2 years from now, you will see a question that has not been on census forms since 1950 when Harry Truman was president. The 2020 census will ask if people responding are American citizens. The White House says it protects voters. Critics say it targets immigrants. And Alyssa Gord shows us some worry it could hurt Texas in the long run.
Particularly in the current political climate, why would one answer a question like that?
Leticia Martoletto thinks immigrants and people who are undocumented will be scared off by a citizenship question on the census. She's been a census worker, and her research depends on accurate numbers.
We are going to have to stick with this data for a decade. And so this is very problematic. Again, particularly in the current political climate regarding immigration, and particularly in the state of Texas.
Federal officials say it's necessary to get at specific data that will highlight voting rights violations.
We've contained this question that's provided data that's necessary for the Department of Justice to protect voters and specifically to help us better comply with the Voting Rights Act, which is something that is important and a part of this process.
Senator Ted Cruz says a question on citizenship is a reasonable, common sense addition to the census. But Peck Young, who studied Texas census data for decades, thinks it's a problem for everyone if undocumented immigrants are deterred by the change, and that local taxpayers may have to pick up the slack.
If you say you have 80,000 kids to educate and you really have 90, the feds are not going to give you money for kids that they don't have in their census, and neither is the state of Texas.
These numbers will be used for planning schools, roads, and services we use in the future. Alyssa Gord, KXAN News.
The census is important because it helps create more equal representation in Congress. It's part of what's called reapportionment. After each census, the 435 seats in the U.S. House are divided up by population. Most states do not see a change in the number of representatives, but their district boundaries will change. Election Data Services performs surveys each year to study what the impact of the next census could be. This time around, they think 8 or 9 states will lose 1 seat in the House. 7 other states will gain seats. The researchers think that Texas could get 3 more representatives in Congress after the 2020 census. With so much at stake, some states are already fighting to block the plan. California's Attorney General announced plans to sue. They say adding the citizenship question will make the census unable to meet its constitutional duty to count everyone. Some state lawmakers in Texas are also trying to keep the citizenship question off the census. Members of the Mexican-American Legislative Caucus say the question could keep Texas from getting some federal funding based on population.
The biggest loser? Texas. It jeopardizes Texans' hard-earned tax dollars that help pay for our neighborhood schools, provide critical health care services, prepare our communities during times of natural disasters, and upgrade roads and infrastructure.
The caucus members called on Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton to join the lawsuit to block the citizenship question. We want to take a deeper dive into this issue. We're joined by Alexa Ura, who covers politics for the Texas Tribune, and Carlos Sanchez, the news and politics editor for Texas Monthly. Welcome.
Thanks.
There was a lot of heated debate about this. Why does this bring so much passion with this issue?
You know, I think for Texas, the stakes are incredibly high when it comes to the census, and getting an accurate count matters. It matters for congressional representation. It matters for the billions of dollars that goes into local communities for schools, for housing, for roads. And so folks are worried that given the current political climate, adding this question to the census questionnaire is only going to make Texas, which is already a hard to count state, even tougher to enumerate.
You know, some people, even the White House, has said this is about protecting voter rights and voter integrity. What benefit could this question have if we added it?
Well, when the Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross announced on Monday that this question would be added to the census, he indicated it came as the result of a request by the Department of Justice last December. And the idea is we need to understand how many people are eligible to vote versus how many people are actually voting, to get a sense of whether there's some systemic problems in terms of allowing people access to the ballot. But those who are against this idea or this notion, they discount that argument and note that the last time this census question was in the 1950s. So it was on that census ballot for well over a century, but it was pulled out when a lot of census experts, including members of the Census Bureau, indicated that it was doing more to discourage people from answering the question than encourage them.
Alexa, any idea how many people in Texas would be affected by this?
Well, there are 5 million immigrants, almost 5 million immigrants in the state, obviously spread out from everywhere from the Rio Grande Valley up to the Panhandle. It's estimated that about 2/3 of them are non-citizens. The other third have naturalized and so are actually U.S. citizens. But I think, you know, the immigrant population in Texas is embedded with the citizen population in Texas, and you know, 1 million Texans live with a family member who is undocumented. And so the concern among folks who are preparing to get an accurate count is that this will not only affect responses from immigrants, but it will affect responses from U.S. citizens who live with family members who are immigrants.
If people don't take part in the census, how would that really affect Texas?
Well, right now, it's estimated that annually $43 billion in federal aid comes to Texas, and that number is directly attributable to the census count. So right there, the amount of federal aid could have a disparaging effect. But more importantly, I think, is the apportionment portion of this. The last census, Texas received 4 new members of Congress, which was the highest number in the country. The expectation is after the 2020 census, Texas will inherit 2 additional seats in Congress. And if you have an undercount, whether it be of eligible voters or of all citizens, that could affect the ability to inherit more members of Congress.
Carlos, Alexa, thank you very much. The huge March for Our Lives rallies across the country last week brought out strong support for new gun control measures.
I believe that we will win!
Those rallies were sparked by outrage over the Parkland, Florida school shootings. But it was a mass shooting here in Texas that led to action on Capitol Hill.
I asked myself, what can I do as one person to try to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
How one Texas senator aims to make a difference with the new rules for gun background checks. A deadly epidemic, opioid addiction taking lives, and the problem could be getting worse.
If we do have fentanyl that's coming Texas's way, how can we get our treatment in place?
The steps state lawmakers are taking now to help addicts and keep the problem from growing. Plus, the president approves money for border security, but not for his pet project.
None of this money will go to build a 30-foot concrete wall.
Where the federal funds are going and what they'll be spent on next on State of Texas. March for Our Lives rallies across the country last week marked a new chapter in the push for gun control in the United States. Those rallies were sparked by the outrage over the Parkland, Florida school shootings, but a mass shooting here in Texas led to action on gun laws on Capitol Hill. On Good Friday, Senator John Cornyn visited the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, where a gunman killed 26 parishioners last November. Cornyn led the push in Congress to pass legislation known as the Fix NICS Act. That's a combination of incentives and penalties to encourage federal agencies and the military to update databases that prevent criminals from buying guns. Senator Cornyn says the new law will save lives.
After each of these shootings, whether it's at Parkland, Florida, or Las Vegas, or wherever, people demand that we do something. And the question I always have is, what is that something you want us to do? Sometimes it strikes me as symbolism, the something that people want us to do, but I was determined to make sure it was something that would actually save lives.
The Fix NICS Act passed as part of the wide-ranging spending bill signed by the president last week. The spending bill also includes grant money for improving security at schools. Also moving forward, a White House proposal to ban bump stocks without waiting for Congress to pass a law to do it. A bump stock is used to modify a semi-automatic rifle so that it can shoot faster, similar to a machine gun. The regulation would outlaw bump stocks, but it's not yet in place. The proposed change will first have a 90-day public comment period before taking effect. Some groups are fighting the plan, but one Texas congressman says he backs the bump stock ban.
A bump stock can turn a legal weapon into an illegal weapon, so therefore it's a device that I think should be prohibited.
One of McCall's priorities in Congress is border security. The spending bill passed last week includes $1.6 billion for border security, but as Anna Wernicke shows us, none of that money can be spent on the president's border wall.
President Donald Trump promised to start construction on the border wall this week.
Literally on Monday.
Congress approved $1.6 billion for border security. But Doris Meisner, former Immigration and Naturalization Service Commissioner, says construction is not going to happen.
This president has a tendency to exaggerate, and it certainly is an exaggeration that construction is going to start on Monday.
Meisner says the $1.6 billion is just a fraction of the $25 billion the president asked for.
What the Congress has done here is significantly curtailed the effort to build a wall across the entire southwest border.
None of this money will go to build a 30-foot concrete wall.
Texas Republican Congressman Michael McCall says this is just a down payment to start the process and build levees, not a physical wall like the president promised.
Concrete levees will be built in the Rio Grande Valley, particularly McAllen, where we're seeing a lot of the illegal crossings.
McCall says he's working with Congress to send more money to the border. But Adam Isaacson with the Washington Office of Latin America says it'll take months for that to happen.
The next bill that any wall funding could be on would be the 2019 Appropriations Act. They've asked for another 62 miles of wall on that bill. But that's not going to pass before the November elections.
And Isaacson says it could be even more difficult then, as it's unclear whether Republicans will be able to maintain the majority in the House of Representatives. In Washington, I'm Anna Wernicke.
Most of the money for border security in this spending bill will go to two Texas counties, Starr and Hidalgo. As Congressman McCall said, a lot of the funding will go toward concrete levees, which help prevent flooding, but also function as a barrier along the border.
And when you're using a drug just to feel normal, that's when you know your addiction has started.
Prescriptions for pain spiral into a dangerous addiction. It's happening across Texas. Now lawmakers are looking for solutions.
Texas is at a point where we can take some proactive steps to prevent unnecessary overdoses.
What they're doing to help people beat addiction and keep substance abuse from spreading in Texas. An international mission for Governor Abbott.
The list of items that shows the way that we're focused on the same concepts, such as entrepreneurship.
How a visit to India could help business and agriculture back here in Texas. State lawmakers are taking a closer look at how the opioid epidemic is affecting the Lone Star State. Wes Rappaport has details about a new panel that's trying to track connections between substance abuse and mental health in Texas.
And when you're using a drug just to feel normal, that's when you know there's your addiction has started.
Teresa Alvarado works with those affected by substance abuse every day in West Texas.
They start using alcohol, then they graduate up to using and abusing different kinds of drugs.
Those different kinds of drugs include opioids like heroin and fentanyl, even prescribed pills. As lawmakers work to solve drug problems across the country,
We're trying to help people break that cycle of addiction.
State leaders heard drug experts explain how the nationwide painkiller abuse epidemic is taking hold on Texas. After crunching the numbers, experts say of the top 25 cities with the highest rates of drug overdoses, 4 are from Texas: Amarillo, Midland, Longview, and Texarkana, showing this problem touches all parts of the state.
I'm confident that we can do some proactive things, take some steps at the prescriber level, at the distributor level, obviously at the manufacturing level.
I think there were great strides that have been made, not just last session, but building through a lot of work that's been done over the last decade, and I think that this is the next extension of that work.
As the state looks at how to battle addiction with prevention and treatment, they're already in the process of implementing rules to crack down on misused prescriptions.
There's not a one-size-fits-all for any state, any city.
We're joined now by Wes Rappaport. This was the first meeting for this committee, so what are they really looking at? Trying to stop people from becoming addicted to opioids or help the people that already are?
Well, it was a little bit of both, Josh. You know, the part of this process is this was just the very first meeting, so there is a lot to still be discussed here. There are lots of stats, lots of figures, lots of numbers, lots of dollar signs that are going to be coming into play here. So this was sort of that preliminary session where they wanted to bring in some experts to run down through the basics. Here's what we know about how this is going so far. Here is how Texas is specifically affected, and what we've learned is Texas is actually doing okay when it comes to the nationwide scheme here. There are still lots of things to be discussed and to be learned, but that was just sort of the preliminary steps here.
You mentioned this is a bigger problem outside of Texas for the nation. We know President Trump has declared this a public health crisis. Did they talk about that at all?
Yeah, you know, they mentioned some states that have had some issues, like West Virginia, Kentucky, you know, Ohio came up as well. And so this is something that they are using some of I guess the framework of here's what's not working, here's where some of the problems are, but then also here's how other states have tried to address this, and here's how other states have tried to tackle this. And so I think that's something that they'll be looking at moving forward is what are they going to be able to do, and what models are going to work best for Texas, because Texas is a big state. As we mentioned in the story, you know, there are lots of of the top 25 cities in the country that have the highest drug use. 4 of them are in Texas. So it's definitely a problem that does affect Texas, and they'll just have to figure out how to kind of get that ball rolling.
We'll wait and see. Thank you, Wes.
Thanks, Josh.
The human price of the opioid crisis is devastating, but there is an economic cost as well. A report from the American Action Forum found in 2015, opioid addiction forced nearly 1 million people out of the workforce. The majority of the workers affected are women. The report found the decline in workers led to a loss of more than 12 billion work hours between 1999 and 2015. That lost productivity adds up, costing businesses up to $700 billion. Bringing jobs to Texas, that's one goal Governor Greg Abbott had as he made an official visit to India. Abbott began his 9-day mission on March 22nd. He met with government officials and business and technology executives across India, working to encourage business development between India and Texas. The governor says Texas and India share an economic connection and cultural similarities.
The list of items that shows the way that we're focused on the same concepts, such as entrepreneurship, such as a private, strong and growing economy, such as empowering the private sector, such as being democratic countries based upon value systems.
Abbott became the first sitting governor from the U.S. to meet the Indian Prime Minister. They discussed topics ranging from defense to aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. This is the 4th time the governor has led a state delegation on an international visit. He made previous official visits to Mexico and Israel. The governor also attended the 2016 World Economic Forum in Switzerland. But that got a lot harder last year after President Trump's administration restored policies restricting travel and trade with Cuba. President Trump kicks a Texan out of the top spot at the State Department.
This can be a very mean-spirited town.
But Rex Tillerson may already be in line for a new job. Why top education leaders in Texas may want him on board. Next on State of Texas. Another change in President Trump's cabinet could put a Texan in charge of the Department of Veterans Affairs. The president fired embattled VA Secretary David Shulkin. He faced criticism for a taxpayer-funded trip to Europe and also clashed with the White House over plans to privatize some VA services. The president said he'll nominate his personal White House physician, Admiral Ronnie Jackson, to be the new VA secretary. Jackson is a native Texan from Levelland. He graduated from Texas A&M in 1991. It's been less than 3 weeks since President Trump fired Rex Tillerson from his job as Secretary of State, but he may already be in the running for a big job here in Texas. Our partners at the Texas Tribune report some leaders in the University of Texas system want Tillerson to take over as chancellor. Tillerson is a UT graduate. He held a forum on campus back in January before heading on an official trip through Central America. One Texas congressman says Tillerson is the right man for the job.
I think he'd be an excellent choice. And great man, served the nation very well, and a lot of humility, just a fine, decent person.
Current Chancellor William McRaven plans to retire at the end of May. The UT System Board of Regents will choose his replacement. Board Chairman Sarah Martinez Tucker said that ideally a new chancellor will start in time to have at least 6 months to prepare for the next legislative session. To meet that goal, they need to have someone in place by early July. A spokesperson for the Regents tells us they're not ready to name candidates, but the process is moving forward. On February 27th, the Regents hired a recruiting firm to help choose a chancellor. Then the board held a special meeting on March 19th to discuss the chancellor search, and they could call another special meeting before their next scheduled meeting on April 30th in Houston. The Regents will give public notice of the finalists at least 21 days before they vote to choose the next chancellor. Thank you for joining us for State of Texas. We'll be back next week, but you can also find our program online in the politics section of KXAN.com. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.